Okay, let's see if this will actually, will actually switch. Hi, Instagram and Facebook. It's been a while since you've seen me, at least back in Elements, and I am back in Elements. For those who are unfamiliar with me, I'm Diana Rachel. I am the author of Urban Magic, A Guide for the City Witch, and the upcoming book, Hex Twisting, Counter Magic Spells for the Irritated Witch. For folks that may have questions or comments during the screening, right now my Facebook's being a little bit uncooperative, so I might have a little trouble seeing your comments. So if you do, go ahead and ask questions. I may not be able to answer them live, but I will try to answer them as I can. So tonight is the first episode in a As Long as It Takes to Have This Conversation episode about smoke cleansing objects, cultural appropriation, environmental awareness, and different plants that you may use for different types of smoke cleansing, which does mean that we have to have a conversation about particularly white sage that is sourced in North America. So for those that are coming in going at the absolute basic of, well, what's smoke cleansing? Smoke cleansing is frequently used interchangeably with the word smudging. And you really shouldn't do that. And I will get into some of the historical background of why it's really a bad idea to use it interchangeably with smudging. But the idea is you use an incense or something you burn to cleanse out the emotional and spiritual energy of a space. And sometimes it goes a little bit further if you get into more advanced spirit work like I do, but that's another conversation for another time, and I will probably teach classes in that later this year. What I would like you to know to start with is most people immediately think when we talk about smoke cleansing of white sage. White sage is a very effective cleanser to a point. A lot of people also think that white sage is a catch-all. It is most certainly not. So let's start with sage as a plant. There are versions of sage that are native to Europe and that are also native to North America. They evolved separately, but they do very similar things chemically, but not exactly the same things. When we talk about smudging, and this is why we don't say smudging, it is because smudging is a specific ceremonial cleansing process to different indigenous tribes, and there is no one Native American way of smudging. Each tribe has their own private practice. It is usually done with white sage and a different set of herbs that are their own allyships, and it is extremely specific and private to those families, to those traditions, to those tribes, and to those nations. And one of the reasons that it's not okay, I know there are people going, okay, well, if we came down on all cultural appropriation, we couldn't order Chinese anymore. Well, no, the Chinese people selling you their food would like you to support them. That's completely different. What this is undermining people who were actively oppressed, and smudging was one of those oppressed practices. Right up until the 1970s, it was illegal for a person of Native American descent to perform a smudging ceremony. I'm going to repeat that because I want to make sure you get that. Until 1970, so during a time period where a lot of us were alive that are watching this, Native Americans were not allowed to perform a ceremony sacred to their own life and to their own practice because they were Native. And the oppression of Native Americans and the continued oppression of Native Americans is a whole conversation I am not remotely qualified to have. But it does make it really suck when we go, well, Native smudge, so can I. Because one, what you're doing is not actually smudging. And two, when they are smudging, they're reclaiming something really important to themselves that is inherently a closed practice because there was an active attempt to completely destroy their culture. And the co-option of it was actually part of that destruction, and there is no way to reinterpret that. There are wiggle rooms in other areas. This is absolutely not one of them. So, with that said, that does not mean you can't smoke cleanse, and it doesn't necessarily mean you can't use white sage. It's a little more complicated than that. But it does mean don't call it smudging unless you're Native, unless you've actually been taught a smudging practice through a private closed tradition in your own family or in your own tribe. And there may be Native people watching this, and whatever you feel comfortable sharing, of course, we want to hear what you have to say. And yeah, I know some of it may be STFU to me, and that's okay. I accept that. So from there, I would like to talk about some other, so for today, we've gone over the intro basic, and we will be doing a deep dive on white sage, what it is, what kind of medicine it is, and other types of sage, and what they do medicinally, what they do spiritually, because a lot of people don't even understand that to work with some plants, you need to have a connection with them. So that will be next week's discussion. What I want to show you today is how to work with other plants that are very easy to propagate. So you can grow them yourself, you can get them from your greenhouse, you can get them from elements, and I'm using things from elements today. And they will do things that are slightly different. Each plant has its own personality and its own medicine. So what I'm going to show you is some really basic ways to clean things out. So at a basic smoke cleansing level, I would say about 90% of what people, when they feel the need to smoke cleanse, it's about clearing out emotional energy or chasing out a ghost. And usually chasing out a ghost, if you need to make sure it's actually a ghost, because sage does not work on a lot of spirits. It will work on specific human dead spirits because it is connected to human energy in a lot of ways, but it is not a catch-all for every spiritual problem you're going to have, and people need to stop using it like it is, because then they get themselves in more trouble. For example, you bap white sage at a fairy, you're going to piss it off, and fairies are mean fuckers anyway. So what I want to talk to you about today are things that are easier to use. So when you're going for something quick and protective where you want to clean out, I'm going to recommend Tulsi Holy Basil. And this one is something that originates in India, but there's also all sorts of types of basil that originate in the United States and in the North Americas. They're aligned with Mars energy, so it's a lot of fire energy. It's a clean, it's a get out energy, but it's also a get out but leave the stuff that I need to make money. It's a good prosperity incense too. But it's good for, I did not have boundaries in this conversation, let's clean this energy up by putting some boundaries back in. Lavender is the kinder, gentler version. And of course, it's elements. They're going to have lavender. So I'm showing this since I'm doing Instagram and Facebook simultaneously today. And so lavender, which if you look at one of the first videos I did here, I do talk about how to work with incenses and charcoal incenses. And I'm going to show you my quick and easy way of making a smoke cleanse bundle with what you have on hand, and I'm kind of notorious for MacGyvering things. So I'm going to do a combo deal, and I'm not going to burn it here. I'm probably going to burn it at home. Not in the house, I promise, Cinti. But starting with lavender, and so, excuse me while I almost move off camera. And would someone like to be my lovely assistant and hand me some things here? So I'm just putting just a little bit of lavender in there, and I promise I washed my hands and dried them thoroughly before I got into these. So a little bit of basil to go with that. And so the lavender is Mercury energy, so that's for better communication. Basil is for Mars, that's for the boundary setting. And typically what I would do, I usually work in 3 to 5. Mugwort is cool, and I need to look up an herbal. I recommend, especially if you're at the absolute beginning of magical herbalism, and this is not the ingest it or take it as medicine. This is the burn it, put it in pouches, do not ingest it, just get to know the plant type of magic. So Cunningham's Encyclopedia of Magical Herbalism is an absolute great starting point. If you get more advanced, definitely get into the medical, learn the poisons. That's a different conversation for a different time. Mugwort medicinally is really good for calming anxiety. A lot of people like it for dream magic. I'm not so much for the dream magic. I'm more on I like to take this in a tea with lavender and mullein because it settles my stomach, it settles my anxiety at night. And there are some people that will smoke it because it does relax the lungs a little bit. I will say this, but again, I am not a medical professional. This is not medical information, nor should it replace anything you are already doing through medical supervision. But for burning, this is pretty okay in small doses. So some people will inhale it and say they have trippy visions. I'm just going to go with a combination of 3 plants because when you're starting, working with 3 at a time and seeing how they interact is great. So I put the herbs down on this piece of paper that I ripped off of a paper bag. Okay, I'm just looking at the camera as my new laptop. So you all can kind of see that. And so it is not unlike rolling a blunt. So you just take it and you roll it up. And I understand this is a hemp positive space, so You take this, you roll it up like this, and then do not use synthetic yarn because if it burns, it will do bad things to everything and your lungs too. I'm using this because it is twined, it's part of the paper bag. If you have cotton string or pretty cotton string, you can do that. And you just roll this up. And again, I'm like notorious for MacGyver on the spot witchcraft because, you know, hey, we have this problem. I guess I better solve it now. So this is what I have started doing in my line of work. And I've just accepted that my life will forever be strange, but I will never, ever be bored or boring, even when I want to be. So, yeah, somebody's liking the hemp positive. Okay, so you've got this little bundle here. And now here's the important part. You need a heat-proof container where you will not set fire to your hand, your hair, or any other body part. And where you can set it down somewhere safely in a bowl of water or in your sink where there is water running to prevent burning your home down. But put this in a bowl. Do we have a cauldron or anything here? Okay. So my lovely assistant, our lovely human Rory, is going and fetching things for me, which I very much appreciate. So a cauldron like this is good. I will warn you that this is Rory. Cauldrons are great with the real cast iron ones. They get hot really fast, so there is still a risk of burning yourself. So it is well worth investing in anybody practicing any kind of magic or witchcraft. It is well worth investing in a good pair of oven mitts or something that gives you more grip. And I have learned this through bitter experience. It's amazing I don't have more calluses and blisters on my hand. But you take this, you light this end. Yes, tongs are good too. There is the heat thing. I've burned myself with these before too. That's why I'm saying oven mitts, but tongs are really good. And you've seen me use tongs in earlier videos. So, but you have this, and this would be good. I'm not going to light it in here because I don't think anybody's lungs are up for it today. But you light this, and you may need to relight it like you would any other smoke cleansing bundle, and you walk through and cleanse the space that's a little sticky or a little weird or a little sluggish. And, you know, depending on how intense you want to get about it, you just use what you have. And then you don't have to burn it all the way down. This is something a lot of people don't understand with the smoke cleanses, is you don't need to burn everything you have in one session. If you let the plant communicate and participate, it's going to tell you when it's ready to stop. So let it tell you when it's ready to stop. It's not that difficult. And so when it stops, you set that aside. Because I have a track record with fire that we joke about, but I've gotten a lot better about. I will put it in a bowl of water, preferably not a plastic bowl of water that will cause other damage, but a glass bowl of water, or I will get like the big aluminum metal bowls from dollar stores or even those aluminum ones to set that in. Or if I don't have that, I will set it in a sink or somewhere close to water and close to ventilation, open a window nearby to prevent any accidents from happening. And that's basically all you need to do. Now, I've talked about when you do a cleansing or a banishing, it's a good idea to seal things. What I'm going to recommend, because it's super easy to get, it's super common, is clove. If you can get a stick of clove incense, you do not need to burn it for more than a few seconds because it will take over everything. So unless you enjoy smelling like an angsty 22-year-old liberal arts major, kind of keep it to a minimum. But it is a really good sealant that works at the same level as frankincense and myrrh and other resins that is much more affordable and much less likely to damage the environment. So that's the basic of the how-to. I'm going to run down a few herbs and I'm going to wrap up for tonight, and then I'll be back next week to talk a lot more in depth about the specifics on sage. But I wanted to give you guys something else you can do in the meantime. So if you're hearing they don't do that, or you're not clear on your own reasons for doing that, you know, you've got something you can do until you can reflect and decide for yourself what feels ethical and right in your own practice. Yes. Yeah, yes, Miranda, don't burn down the house, you might trip. That is absolutely correct. Please keep that in mind. So I am going to look, I think I'm going to, this one was pine, yeah? Okay. So this is one of the more unusual bundles I've seen here. And when I was living in California, I like to make bundles from eucalyptus leaves that I would find in the ground in Golden Gate Park. It's very cleansing. It's very similar in energy to what white sage does. It's plentiful and you're not taking anything away from anybody because it's all there on the ground and nobody wants to rake it. I'm not sure how the pine needles were collected. I'm getting the impression it would be from a very similar process. They clean in a way similar to eucalyptus, also because pine comes with tar. It's kind of a double cleaning and sealing energy thing, so you actually don't need to use 2 plants to follow up and seal your work with pine. That's one of the more fun things about it. Also, it lasts longer because it's an evergreen, and they like to try to go forever because apparently they think they're immortals or take their best crack at it. Ooh. This one is one of my favorites, bay leaf. Get it at any grocery store, or I will get it in large bags from my personal herbal suppliers. And I think a lot of people that are on the internet have seen the spells where you write your wish in the bay leaf and burn it. You can write, I need my house cleansed, or cleanse my house, or remove energy times 10,000, remove negative energy times 10,000 on one leaf, and bring in positive energy times 10,000 on the other, and it works. You don't even have to go room to room. So this one is highly efficient, highly affordable, and as long as you've got a good relationship with bay leaf, it works phenomenally well and does not need to smoke up your entire house to do cool stuff. And for those that may have taken my WitchCon Invisibility course, we've talked about other cool things that bay leaves do when you don't want people getting up in your business. A lot of people like to use rosebuds for love spells. They are phenomenal for protection work. So there is an old folk practice of when you're having trouble sleeping, you're having problems with nightmares. Yes, you could do the circle of salt around your bed, but you can also do a circle of rose petals around your bed because roses, think about those thorns, are very protective. They're actually little warriors, even though we like to spoil them. So rosebuds are good there. You can burn them as an incense. I don't like to burn them as well because burning rose doesn't work as well for me. And an aside that I want to add for people that don't do so well with smoke, instead of smoke cleansing, you can do steam cleansing. You make a nice hot cup of tea and walk through the house with that. It's still steam. It is still sublimated into the air. It can still get the energy out in a way that does not harm your lungs. You can even cheat and put no more than 1 or 2 drops because bad things happen with more than that. If you have the essential oils or a good quality fragrance oil that you trust, you can also put a drop or 2 in your humidifier, or like I have a mini humidifier I can drop in a cup of tea and that will do the job for you too. So that can be very handy. I have already talked about the wonders of eucalyptus. It's also good when people are congested. So even eucalyptus is especially good on stagnant energy when everything feels stuck, when you're getting ready to do an uncrossing because things are not moving forward. This is actually pretty important. So, also, I think most of us have like that one relative who just cannot stand eucalyptus and we never want him in our house anyway. So really good for that kind of banishing. Cedar leaves are very similar to pine in that they last a long time. What cedar does is it repels insects. So when you've seen those old cedar chests, that's where people would store things they didn't want the moths to eat. They do something similar on a spiritual level. We'll get rid of the tiny little pests, those tiny little emotional offshoots that make you a little nuts. So very handy there. Okay, thyme. Thyme is interesting in that, yes, it is also congestion clearer. And ants specifically hate thyme. So for example, for my own shop, I make this formula called ant nope, and thyme is one of the key components because you spray it down and the ants will nope out. And it's the same idea as the things that you don't want sneaking in, even if they're not necessarily harmful, but they're still intrusive, thyme is really good for that. And I will say it is also a component in Raid, so it may smell a little bit like insecticide to you. It does not have all the poisonous stuff in it, but that is one of the key components that is used, which is why it smells a little bit that way, so that may not be for everybody. If it's not, but you want to enjoy the benefits of thyme in a different way, I like to soak thyme in honey, because then it gives me a good cough syrup during cold and flu season. Okay, is that everything? Oh, am I getting the ring? Okay. Oh, do you want your stuff back? Okay, so this is the something else you can do this week. And next week I will be coming in and talking more in depth about white sage, the history of sage, and I may just go through all of the sages. I'm not much of a plant nerd. But for now, this gives you something else you can use. All of the products that I demonstrated tonight are available to Elements, and we can have a much more in-depth discussion later on. Please feel free to comment on the Instagram or the Facebook feeds. I will come back and check in, so if you have any questions or things you'd like me to answer next week, I will. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate your time. I'm so happy to be back, and happy Thursday. I am aiming to be back next Wednesday. All right, thank you.